Welcome to Bodkins Curiosity Shop, where you'll find the unique, the bizarre, and sometimes the haunted. Feel free to look around, peruse the items, and never fear. There's nothing here that bites. Hard, anyway. Hello there. I'm glad to see you've returned to Bodkins Curiosity Shop. I am your shopkeeper, Chris Baker, and today we have got a wondrous item indeed. If you'll take a look over here on the shelf, we have a display of vintage, if not antique dolls. If you'll take a look at this one over here in particular. This doll is circa the early 1960s, and while it's seen its share of wear and tear over the decades, and the wear of the gears have long since made this doll's usefulness expired. Once upon a time, if you pulled the string, this doll might have even moved and talked. Certainly a marvel of technology for its time. But what if this doll could move and talk without the use of a pulled string? What if today's technology were to be applied to such a toy? What might it say? What might it do? And it's that question that makes the potential for horror grow exponentially. And therein lies the subject of today's episode of Bodkins Curiosity Shop. So let's pull out the kinetoscope and take a look at the new film, M3GAN. So M3GAN's one of those films that we've been seeing trailers for quite a long time, and I've really been looking forward to this because I'm like just about anyone else. There are very few things creepier than creepy dolls. And I have been, I won't say I've been afraid of dolls since I was a child, but I've always had a little bit of apprehension when it came to dolls. Whenever I would walk past my sister's room and see her collection of dolls sitting there looking at me, I always kept the corner of my eye trained on them as I walked past for fear that maybe one of these dolls might turn their head or, God forbid, get up and start chasing me down the hall. And even to this day, you see a bunch of dolls sitting around, you just wonder if there's anything going on in there, what passes for a mind, and what might they be plotting. So creepy dolls, they still have that sort of effect on me, which made me anticipate this movie even more. So I was really excited about this movie, M3GAN. The trailers seem like this could be really creepy. I was afraid that it might lean a little more into horror comedy than it actually did. I'll just throw this out here right now. There are going to be spoilers to this. So if you haven't seen M3GAN and you don't want anything spoiled, as much as I'd love for you to listen to this, you might not want to, at least not right now. I encourage you to go watch the movie M3GAN, check it out. It's in theaters right now. And then after you've seen it, come back and listen and hear my thoughts on it and see if, we're kind of on the same wavelength. If not, if you don't care about spoilers and you're like, I'm probably not going to watch it anyway, you might want to listen to this and it may change your mind. Or it may solidify the fact that you didn't want to watch it in the first place. But if you don't mind spoilers, please feel free to continue with me. If you don't want anything spoiled for you, go watch the movie first, then come back and listen to this podcast. But right off the bat, I was really afraid this might lean into horror comedy because director Gerard Johnson has a history. His last film, Housebound, was a horror comedy. So I was a little afraid of that. And I saw some articles. I think Entertainment Weekly put out an article talking about this being a horror comedy that leaned more into comedy than horror. And I didn't find that to be the case at all. And this is one of those movies I talked my wife into going to see it with me. She's not a horror fan. I mean, she has watched horror movies over the years, and it's not that she doesn't like horror movies. She's just afraid of the things that go bump in the night. And the more realistic a movie could be, the more she is inclined to not want to watch it because she's gotta go out and take the dog out in the middle of the night at her mom's place. So she's a little leery about watching things that might stir up those what ifs, so what's lurking in the shadows sort of feelings. So she thought she would want to watch this. So we went to the movie theater yesterday and watched this movie. I'm recording this on Sunday, so that would have been Saturday. And she agreed with me. She reads Entertainment Weekly quite a lot as well. And she found that this didn't lean comedy at all. It had some chuckle moments. It had some, oh, that's kind of funny, but nothing that ever made me laugh out loud. There was bits of irony, and there were bits of, oh, I see what they did there, sort of moments, but nothing that ever made the audience laugh or anything like that. So if anybody tells you this is a horror comedy, it's not. It's a straight up horror film. To the lengths with which they went horror with this, that's debatable, and we'll kind of discuss that as we talk about this movie. But if you hear horror comedy and you're like me, you're just, I'm so tired of horror comedies right now. It's like we can't make a scary movie, so we'll make a horror comedy, make it funny, and elicit some reaction that way. I'm like, just make a freaking scary movie. That's all I want. That's all I want with my horror. Horror comedy's fine from time to time, but Jesus, it's like every other movie is a horror comedy. This was not one of those. That's what I'm trying to get across here. So we're going to dive right into talking about this movie. So the plot of this movie is essentially this young girl, Katie, is going on a ski trip vacation with her mom and dad, and there's an accident and her parents die, and she goes to live with her aunt, Gemma. And Gemma, played by Allison Williams, is a roboticist, I believe I think that's the title of her job, but she creates robots, and she's working on these robotic toys for kids that interface with the internet and their iPad and that sort of thing. A lot of toys that are technologically advanced that, are commonplace for kids these days. But she takes in her niece Katie, and Gemma's finding that she's in a bit over her head because she's very career oriented. She doesn't have a love interest in her life. She doesn't have kids or anything like that. She is work. And she's finding that she's ill-equipped to take care of her young niece who is dealing with the trauma of losing her parents. So she kind of fast tracks this project she's been working on in a way to help her with her niece. And she has created this robot, this android called M3GAN, which stands for Model 3 Generative Android. And M3GAN's primary function is to protect Katie from being hurt, whether it be physical harm or emotional harm. And M3GAN essentially starts taking her job a little too serious. But I think that is a great jumping off point for this movie, because this movie really had a feel like a mix of that 80s TV series Small Wonder with the little girl robot. Small Wonder meets that Twilight Zone episode, The Living Doll meets The Bad Seed. And all those things kind of intermingled together. We'll kind of talk about why I say that as we talk about these characters and we talk about this movie through the lens of the characters. And it's really, for the most part, this is a very simple plot. There aren't a lot of twists and turns in that. And at first I was like, I really wish there were some big twists or some reveal, but I don't think you needed that. It's a fairly straightforward film. And it is a fairly small cast. I mean, your main cast is Allison Williams as Gemma, Violet McGraw as Katie, the M3GAN character, which we'll kind of get into the nuts and bolts, pun intended, on that a little later. There's a couple of Gemma's co-workers that we meet, but they're really, I can't even say B characters because they're not. I mean, it's almost like a tertiary role for them. There is Gemma's boss and his assistant, and then a troublemaking next door neighbor, and like a lot of background characters. But for the most part, this is about Gemma, Katie, and M3GAN. So we'll talk about the Gemma character and Allison Williams, who plays Gemma. Gemma is, and I kind of really gave you a basic overview. She is a workaholic. She is a roboticist. She's all about her job, not taking time. I like how she comes home the one day at the beginning of the movie when she finds out that her her sister and her brother-in-law have been killed and that she has to take care of her niece. She walks in the door and she has one of those, I can't remember what they call it at the time or if it's even a real thing, but it's almost kind of like an Alexa or a Siri, but she walks in and this robotic voice tells her that she has 5 Tinder messages. So she's thought about the dating pool, but she's not dating anyone. She's kind of a loner because she is so focused on her work and what she is doing. And she's very much that single person that likes everything in their place. She has old collectible toys that she keeps on the shelf that you don't play with these toys. They're collectible. They're for looking at. And you can't even look at them because they're still in the box. Because, God forbid, they might be worth something one day. But she's very regimented in her life. And to have her niece come live with her is kind of an upheaval of that. She not only has to take care of this other human being, but this other human being is now invading her space, kind of her fortress of solitude where she has everything in its place and now everything is disrupted. So there's almost maybe not a resentment because she loves her niece. She feels for her niece. She just doesn't know how to cope with dealing with anybody but herself because she has been so focused on herself and her work for so long that she hasn't taken the time to let anybody else in to allow them to affect her or allow herself to affect them. And I think that is really kind of where the whole conflict begins, is because she's out of her element. She's out of her depths and she doesn't know how to take care of her niece. So she's trying to come up with a way to take care of her niece the only way she knows how. And that's through robotics. That's through artificial intelligence. That's through technology. And that is kind of a running theme of this movie that we'll kind of get into a little bit later, but we'll definitely discuss that. The theme of technology kind of being a de facto babysitter and caretaker for kids these days. But I really liked Allison Williams' performance in this. I mean, if you're not familiar with her by name, of course, if you watch Get Out, she played the Rose character in that. She's done a couple movies since then. She's done a little bit of TV since then as well. But I thought she did a really good job. I liked her in Get Out, and I really liked her in this because you got that bit of sympathy. You feel for this woman who has lost her sister and her brother-in-law and now has this niece that she has to take care of. You feel sympathy for her, but then you also get the almost quasi resentment. You sometimes wonder if she resents the fact that she has to take care of her niece. She loves her niece, but she's almost doing this out of a duty to her sister. And you kind of get that feel from her. And then as she kind of, her character develops into somebody that is capable of taking care of her niece and realizes that she does want to take care of her niece. She does want to be there for her emotionally, like her niece needs. It was a really interesting character development for her, and I thought Allison Williams really played that development well because you got that bit of annoyance in the fact that she's got, I've got to go to work and do this. I can't stay here and sit with you all day. Are you going to be okay? And the annoyance of her niece wanting to play with her collectible toys that are up on a shelf, and then the yeah, okay, that's fine. You can play with it, sort of thing. Knowing that she doesn't want her to. I've been there. I've been that guy that has a bunch of boxed toys on the shelf, and nobody can touch them because they might be worth money someday. And nephews and nieces coming over, and that's all they want to do is play with your collectible toys. I finally got over that, and like I don't care. I'd rather spend time with my nieces and nephews, having fun, playing with toys, with the toys that I loved growing up. I'd rather do that than have something sitting on the shelf that might be worth $50 one day. That's a no-brainer. It became a no-brainer after a while. That's what you see in Gemma, and I think that's what I saw of myself in this Gemma character as well. Now, the niece, Katie, is played by Violet McGraw, and Violet McGraw she's done quite a few things over the years. I mean, she was in Dr. Sleep. She played Violet in that. She was in Black Widow. She played a young Yelena Belova, the younger version of the Florence Pugh character in Black Widow. She played a younger version of the character Nell from The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix. So she's done quite a few things, and I really enjoyed her as a younger actress because I feel she's got a lot of good range for her age. You know, you felt the sorrow and the depression and I've lost my whole world. My mom and dad are gone, and that quiet withdrawal from the rest of the world. You got that. You got the anger and rage about what has happened to her later on. I mean, it's triggered by other things, but you have to understand that the rage is coming from what she's lost. And that feeling of loss she gets again when M3GAN is being taken away from her, essentially. She's feeling that loss of something she loves again. So it is rage about the fact that Gemma is taking M3GAN away from her, but it's even on a bigger scale, I think, rage about that feeling of loss that she had when her parents were taken away from her. But Violet McGraw really plays that as well. The utter joy that you see open up in her when she starts interacting with the M3GAN android is something special, because you see this child that is going through this trauma and is just withdrawing from her aunt, from society in general, and you see her start to open up. You see that little spark of joy turn into a raging fire. And like I said, Violet McGraw did a fantastic job with all the range of emotion that she had to portray in this. And she really does a good job. You know, she does that. She plays that sweet, innocent child like she is. But then, you know, like I said, when it goes into more rage and more anger, you can see she can go into those darker places. So as a young actress, I think Violet McGraw did a fantastic job with this role, and does a fantastic job in general. It's one of those young child actors that you're really interested to see how they develop as an actor over however many years they decide to be in film and television. But I think she's got a great future ahead of her. So I was really, really happy with her. I really liked her as this Katie character. I thought she brought a lot to the role that you really need. You know, child actors, you know, kids and pets, they always say are some of the toughest things to work with in film and television. And I don't know how she is as a child, probably a very, regular, precocious child, but as an actress, she really brings a lot to this role and to this production, which I don't think, you couldn't just get any kid actor to come in and do what she did. Now, I would talk about the M3GAN character right now, but I think I'm going to save it because, we'll talk about the M3GAN character. We'll talk about how they brought this character to life a little bit later and who played the various parts of M3GAN. We'll talk about that. But M3GAN as a character is very interesting because, she's this android and she is brought in as this kind of surrogate sister, surrogate nanny, surrogate caretaker for Katie because Gemma just doesn't know how to take care of her niece. She's never had to take care of anyone but herself. So now she's thrust into this situation where she has to take care of her niece and she just doesn't know what to do. And so it's a lot easier for her to create this artificial intelligence android, which she had been working on prior, but she's using it as a way to help take care of her niece in ways that she can't. So this android is there for her emotionally. She's there as a companion, as a friend to play with. They keep secrets, they dance, they draw, and they do all these things. And she's smart, so she can help with Katie's homeschooling. And it's just, like I said, in a way, this is a way for Gemma to absolve herself of the responsibility of being the de facto parent in this relationship between her and her niece. And now she's put all of this on the android. And then, of course, once they show the android to her boss and the company she works for, they're all over it and want to mass produce this thing and make this the must-have toy for any child. even though the price tag would probably preclude most children from owning it, they want to make this into the next big thing. But we see that the M3GAN character, the M3GAN android, is always learning and always developing. It's artificial intelligence, so it's always growing, always trying to learn more, always pushing the boundaries, trying to redefine its prime objective, which is to take care of Katie physically and emotionally, protect her physically and emotionally, I should say. And she almost learns that to do that, she has to break the rules of her creator, Gemma. So it gets to the point where Gemma's slowly losing control of M3GAN, who in a way feels like Gemma is as much a threat to Katie as anyone. So she stops listening to her. When Gemma tries to power her down, she will not power down. And protecting Katie becomes the most important thing, to the point where she will do anything to protect Katie, even if that involves murderous intent. And that's where I found a lot of the interesting parallels to some of those other shows that I talked about. You know, you had the small girl robot from Small Wonder who's there to take care of the kids and things like that. You had the living doll, which is, this doll that comes to life to protect the little girl from her abusive stepfather. But she's so protective that even at the end, she's threatening the mother to stay in line, or she'll do her in as well. And then you had the bad seed, where you have this little girl who looks all prim and proper, but she will go to murderous ends to get what she wants. And even the look of the M3GAN character, just the dress with that big puffy bow around her neck, felt very much like the little girl from Bad Seed, where like she's just in, these frilly, puffy dresses, but she is going to kill somebody because they won't give her what she wants. And as much as Small Wonder wasn't a disturbing show, the other two are very disturbing pictures of a small child's toy and a small child as well. This movie really felt like it drew from the things that were disturbing about those. So those are the characters, and I liked how they did this, because it wasn't necessarily a slow burn, but very much through that first act of the movie, you are just meeting Gemma, you're meeting Katie, you're getting to understand their relationship. When the M3GAN android is brought into the mix, we spend a lot of time seeing the bond develop between Katie and M3GAN. We get to see them when they first meet, and Katie's just kind of shy and reserved, but then when she starts to interact with M3GAN, the awe and wonder, and then the joy of having somebody that looks her age, even if it is an android that she can talk to and she can confide in, and that will take an interest in her, where her aunt really doesn't feel like she's taken an interest because she's just overwhelmed by the whole situation. But M3GAN does take an interest in Katie, and I think Katie responds to that and attaches to that. And they even talk about how, after a child loses parents, that they will attach to the first thing that really kind of shows interest in them and become very attached to them. And we see this attachment. And I think you really needed that in the first act. You didn't really need anything sinister to go on. You needed to see this bond and see this attachment between Katie and M3GAN. And then through the second act, that's really where you kind of start to see the cracks in the pavement, where M3GAN is, just gives little looks to Gemma when Gemma is trying to reprimand Katie. And at first, M3GAN seems like a mom, almost a mom to Katie. She's telling her to wash her hands and flush the toilet. She's telling her to use a coaster. Then once she starts to see Gemma doing the same thing, she kind of pulls back from that. M3GAN pulls back from that and starts to look at Gemma as almost a threat as well. And then we start seeing how she deals with other threats. the next door neighbor lady and her dog were two scenes you saw coming. You knew both of these characters were going to meet their end at the hand of M3GAN. The kid at the little special outdoor fun time school that Gemma took Katie to. There's this bully, and you see that in the trailer where this bigger boy is bullying Katie, and M3GAN has that line, "This is where you're supposed to run." And then she starts running after this boy, like on all fours. It's probably one of the creepier things in the movie. I don't know what it is about people who should be walking upright, running on all fours. I don't know what it is about that creeps me out, but it was very creepy. The scene where Gemma kills the next door neighbor's dog was suspenseful. It wasn't as creepy as I thought it would be. And where she kills the next door neighbor lady, that was actually pretty creepy, luring her into that shed, and her coming out of the darkness was kind of bizarre and creepy. And the way she killed the neighbor lady was gruesome without being gruesome. That was the thing about this movie. This movie was a PG-13, so you didn't get a lot of gore. You got a lot of suspense, and we'll kind of talk about the atmosphere a little bit later, but you didn't get a ton of gore in this, which I'm kind of on the fence about whether I thought it needed it or not. They wanted to keep this a PG-13 rating so teens could come and see this. And I don't think you need horror to be an R. There's a lot of really good PG-13 rated horror films out there. Drag Me to Hell, The Visit, A Quiet Place. So there are a lot of good PG-13 horror films out there. So you didn't need a bunch of F-bombs. That was how I knew that this was PG-13, because they had one non-sexual fuck in it. I was like, oh, this is going to be PG-13. We haven't heard that word until now, and we probably won't hear it again. We're not going to get a lot of gore. Of course, I knew it was PG-13 going in, but that, I think, kind of sealed the deal. But yeah, I don't know if you needed gore. There were times where I thought maybe a little more gore would have helped, but you don't need gore to be a horror film. And I'm on the fence about this, because I know there are going to be a lot of people that say, "Oh, it's not horror, it's a thriller," or what have you, because there's not a lot of gore in it. I mean, to some people, gore equals horror. I don't think that's the case, but there were times where I wish it did show a little more than it actually did. But cutting away from the gore did leave a lot to the imagination, which I think is an interesting choice as a director, to leave it for the viewer's mind to wonder how that played out. Sometimes I want to see it. Sometimes I don't need to see it. Sometimes I wish I could see it, but I'm okay that I didn't. I think this is one of those where I wish I could have seen what happened to some of these characters, but I don't think that I needed to. Granted, I could change my mind in a month from now. But yeah, I was intrigued by the next door neighbor lady and her dog there, and the bully got the Gage Creed treatment as M3GAN chased him out onto the highway. There were a couple other characters, Gemma's two assistants or her co-workers. That scene was really kind of creepy at first. They've got M3GAN suspended. They've got her all plugged in, but they find out she's still connected to the internet because she's still connected to the cords. So the guy goes up and is unplugging her. She's sitting there suspended in this kind of contraption, and she comes to life and attacks him. And you think she's going to blow the place up, but it's a very small explosion. It just knocks the two characters back. So they live. I kind of wish those characters would have died, just because, it would have just lent a little more credence to this killer robot if the body count's a little higher. I know these two surviving are the reason why the cops show up at the end, but the cops showing up at the end and the ambulance showing up at the end had no bearing on the ending of the story, so it really wasn't even needed. Those two characters didn't need to survive. Even for a potential sequel, I don't think those characters needed to survive, and we'll talk about that coming up a little bit later too. But I did like this scene where, that anticipation of this guy is going and hooking these things all from the back of M3GAN, and then he comes around to the front to hook unhook that one from the back of her head. I don't know why he had to go around to the front of her, but it made it easier for her to start strangling him and hang him from this contraption with all these wires and pulleys. But it really did set up a lot of tension, and that's one of the things that this movie hinged on, was the building of tension and the building of suspense. And then some of the scarier scenes had to be kind of at the end, when you get that final showdown between Gemma and M3GAN. Gemma walking around a dark house and then all of a sudden hearing piano playing. And I really dug the final showdown between M3GAN and Gemma because it felt legit. M3GAN is an android. She's strong, but she's not super strong. Not strong enough to where Gemma can't put up a decent fight. But she's overmatched by this android. And I liked how, you saw it coming a mile away. Early in the movie, Gemma, when she gets the idea of making M3GAN to help out with her niece, before she gets this idea, she shows Katie this prototype of a robot she built when she was in college, I believe. And it had these 2 gloves that you can use to manipulate the robot's arms and make it walk and do all these things. And I honestly, as soon as I saw it, I was like, well, that's how they're going to fight M3GAN at the end. I thought it was going to be Gemma. I thought it was going to be the ant doing that. But I really dug how they switched it up. It was probably the only real surprise, if you will. It wasn't that surprising, but I was surprised that it was Katie and not Gemma who dons these gloves and uses this robot that Gemma built when she was in college to fight M3GAN. And I like that scene. That was fun. It was a good robot on robot scene, watching this bigger, less technologically advanced robot ripping M3GAN in half. And of course, like any good living doll movie, she's not done just yet. And Katie saving Gemma's life by stabbing this robot in its, for lack of a better term, its CPU, if you will, with a screwdriver was, that's what you would expect from a crazy killer android movie. So it wasn't reinventing the wheel, but it was satisfying. And then as Katie and Gemma walk out of the house to the oncoming police and emergency rescue people, you see this little, it almost looks like a little mushroom. It is the device that is Gemma's Alexa or Siri, her virtual assistant in the home that she can have turn on the lights or check her messages for her. You see it light up as they walk by and then turn to look at Gemma and Katie as they walk out. And you're almost wondering, is M3GAN's consciousness, is her artificial intelligence somehow in this now, and what will it take for it to get back out into something else to exact her revenge or whatever the case may be. And we'll talk about that as we talk about kind of the future of this and a possible sequel. But for the most part, I really enjoyed this. Was it as scary as I wanted it to be? No. But like I said, it built a lot on tension and suspense, and what it did there was really good. What it built on the creepy factor. Living dolls are creepy. Dolls are creepy in general. And then when you start making them do weird backbendy things and that fake face, that plastic face, making certain movements and looks and dancing just out of nowhere creepily. And then when it's kind of on the fritz and it's doing this herky-jerky movement, it really excelled at the creepiness of what dolls bring to the table in horror movies. They set out to make a creepy doll movie, and I think they succeeded in that. Now, the one thing I found really interesting is how they brought the M3GAN character to life, because they used a lot of different things, a lot of different technologies. They used some puppetry, they used some animatronics, but they also used a live person and a lot of digital enhancement. And I gotta give a tip of the hat to the 2 young actresses who brought M3GAN to life. You had Amy Donald, who is a young actress in New Zealand, and they brought her in because they filmed this all in New Zealand. That's where Gerard Johnston's from. So they filmed in New Zealand, and Amy Donald is a New Zealand actress, and she did the physical performance for M3GAN. She was the one in the dress and the tights and doing all the movements and for the most part. I mean, I know they did some animatronic stuff as well, but for the most part, she did the lion's share of a lot of the movement for M3GAN, and they brought in movement coaches to help her come across a little more robotic, and I thought she did a fantastic job for being a young girl. I'm not sure how old she exactly is, but she's about that height, so I gotta imagine she's probably right around the same age as Violet McGraw. But she just did, from a movement standpoint, just did fantastic with bringing M3GAN to life, and a lot of those creepy movements and things were all her doing this robotic move and these head tilts and things like that just brought a lot of the creepiness and the realism. I mean, you really felt like this was an android. You felt like this was this doll come to life in this movie, and gotta give a huge shout out to Amy Donald for doing that, bringing the physical performance of M3GAN to life. Fantastic job. Now, the voice, on set, it was Amy McDonald doing the voice for M3GAN as they're acting and doing these scenes, but they overdubbed the voice with a young American actress, Jenna Davis, who does the voice of M3GAN, and she really did a fantastic job with that. She's an actress and a singer, and she did get to show off some of her singing chops in this, which was, again, it almost added to the creepiness of this character, just all of a sudden out of nowhere starting to sing. It all seems logical when you're watching The Sound of Music or some other musical, but when you're looking at real life, or what is supposed to be a representation of real life that's not a musical, and somebody just starts singing out of nowhere, even if it's not a living doll, that's creepy. Just people that start singing out of nowhere creep me out. I'm just going to throw that out there right now. But unprompted, and you just start belting out some song, I'm like, what the F's the matter with you? Are you okay? But at any rate, she did the voice. She brought a lot of that quality that you get from voiced dolls and voiced toys. She really had that kind of vibe about her vocal performance and the singing. She's a wonderful singer. Don't get me wrong. Just because a character singing out of nowhere doesn't mean it wasn't a good job. She did a fantastic job with the singing. Beautiful voice. And I just loved the vocal performance she gave, because you got the love and the care, but you also got the sinister and the malice that she starts to feel later on when people are threatening Katie in various ways, and she goes to exact her justice on them. You get some of that malice and that sinister nature in the vocal performance as well. The fact that they brought this whole M3GAN character to life in so many different facets. Like I said, the animatronics, the puppetry, the physical performance from Amy Donald, the vocal performance from Jenna Davis. They even used a lot of digital enhancements, making the skin smooth and the eyes much bigger. I don't know if they used some sort of mask or if they did that to Amy Donald's face, but they did a lot of digital enhancement with New Zealand's own Weta Effects, who did a ton of work and really came to life with Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. But just all the elements that brought M3GAN to life really is kind of what makes this movie special, because so much of it was done physically. I mean, they could have easily just done some shitty CG robot, and it probably would have been cheaper, probably would have been easier. But they took the care. You've got producers like Jason Blum and James Wan, and you have a director like Gerard Johnston, who care about this story and really wanted to put it to life. From what I understand, Jason Blum asked Gerard Johnston to do several projects, but he kept getting turned down. And it wasn't until this one came along that Johnston said, okay, this is the one I want to do. And so he really had a love for this script and this story, and the producers had a love for this story, and they really went to great pains to do this right. And for me, doing so much of the special effects physically, maybe with some digital enhancement, but for the most part, physically. I think that to me shows that you care about what you're doing. You're not just looking for the cheapest and easiest way. But not only bringing M3GAN to life physically through the performance and through the animatronics and the puppetry, just the look of M3GAN was fantastic, because she had that kind of old school 60s, 70s, that old school look about her, that classic look of style and fashion, that big bow neck thing, the short sleeve dress with the long sleeves underneath, the tights under the dress. It just had a very classic 60s, 70s look about her, I guess is probably where I think it fits in the best, that you saw a lot in the 60s, 70s, and like I said, even on in through the early 80s. But she just had that classic look, and that look that really reminded me of the character in The Bad Seed. You know, that prim and proper girl that's supposed to be the all-American girl, but there's a dark side underneath. And I thought the costuming for M3GAN was such a wonderfully inspired choice, because it harkened back to another time. It harkened back to some of those older creepy killer dolls and creepy killer kid movies and TV's episodes from back in the day. And the M3GAN costume in this movie, it really pulled out some of those creepy killer characters that I think this movie needed, at least the older audience who remembers stuff like that. It really needed to really put that muscle memory into effect. So you're making that connection between some of those old creepy killers and this new creepy killer that we've got on our hands. And then, of course, we kind of hit on it a little bit earlier, but the theme of this movie was, I think, a really good theme, because it really is all about parents and adults who use technology as a surrogate babysitter or nanny or nursemaid or surrogate caretaker for their child. You know, it started a long time ago, just plopping a kid down in front of a TV and throwing a VHS cassette in and letting them watch, you know, Land Before Time on repeat ad nauseum. It's been around probably even longer than that. But as technology's advanced, we have become a society where we just, you know, give your kids a tablet and let them surf the internet or play games and call it educational, but, you know, that way we don't really have to deal with the kids. And that is a huge theme in this, is not really being invested in your kid's life and letting technology take care of them. Let technology occupy their mind so they're out from under your feet. I think that's a huge detriment to any generation, but especially the younger generation, where kids are inundated with technology, whether it's cell phones, whether it's iPads, whether it's video game systems, social media, TikTok and Instagram and all of that. They're just bombarded with technology, and a lot of it is technology that keeps them linked with people, but keeps them connected with people on a non-physical level. And you don't really get that physical interaction. People don't know how to, and especially kids, a lot of kids don't know how to interact with people on a real human one-on-one level. And I think it's parents' jobs, it's parents' responsibilities to teach their kids that, to make sure that they're around other kids, to make sure that they're invested and involved in their kids' life. So, you know, it's not, they're not letting whoever's willing to listen and whoever's willing to give advice to their kids. You're not letting, you know, people you don't know raise your kids. You're raising your kids. You're responsible for your kids and how they turn out. And if you don't want them to turn out bad, you got to be involved, and you got to make sure that you're teaching them the lessons, the good lessons that you want them to have. You're teaching them the good values that you want them to have. You're teaching them the good morals that you want them to have, to become good and upright and moral people. That's not, you know, I'm not speaking on like a fundamentalist level. I'm just talking about, you know, you want your kids to do what's right. You got to teach them what's right. And you can't do that while you're off doing God knows what and letting them sit there on the computer or their phone all day long and having no physical interaction or physical conversations with them. You're not investing in them emotionally or socially. I hate to get on a soapbox. I'm not trying to, because I have no kids, and I would like to think I would do the right thing as a parent. But that really is the theme of this movie, is being invested in your kid's life. Gerard Johnson said that this film is about people who don't spend enough time with their children. And I think that is probably the most important theme of this, because if you're not raising your kids, somebody else is, and you don't really know who they are. Who knows? They might be a killer robot. So ultimately, like I said, I really liked this movie. It wasn't my favorite movie. I've heard people saying, oh, this is the best movie of the year so far. This may be too early, but this is the best movie of 2023. I don't know if I'd go that far. This was a really good movie. It really did dive into a lot of atmosphere. I think it was beautifully shot. They did a good job with the cinematography from Pete Caffrey. A lot of low light scenes that were lit just right to add an air of creepiness. They played a lot with dark and shadow, which I really loved. The screenplay from Michaela Cooper was really good. I thought the story was excellent. I thought, of course, James Wan and Michaela Cooper came up with the story. I thought the script was well done. I thought the dialogue was really good. I thought the story was solid. Like I said, there were no twists and turns. There were no big reveals or anything like that, other than I thought it was going to be Gemma with the robot Bruce that was fighting Megan at the end, and it turned out to be Katie. A little bit of a surprise for me, but maybe it shouldn't have been that big of a surprise. It was between one of those two, so I had a 50-50 shot in guessing who it might be. But while it lacked in twists and turns, and it lacked in like huge horror. I mean, this wasn't a huge horror film as far as the levels of horror you got. You did get horror. You got suspense. You got creepy moments. You got murders. There wasn't a ton of gore. A little bit of blood, but not a lot of gore. It probably wasn't the most horrific horror film, but was still a really solid horror film, and a horror film I wouldn't mind going back and watching. And I think that says a lot, because there are a lot of horror films I'm like, oh, that was pretty good, but I don't care if I ever watch it again. This is a movie that I would probably go back and watch again, because I did enjoy it enough to where I might give it a second or maybe even a third glance, because I enjoyed the acting, I enjoyed the story, I enjoyed the effects that much. I enjoyed like I said, the cinematography and the look and the atmosphere and the feel of this all had the great hallmarks of a horror film. Like I said, I don't think this was a great horror film, but I thought this was a pretty good horror film, if not a really good horror film. And I'll be interested to see what they do in the future with this. Word on the street is that it has been greenlit. They are going to do a sequel. Now, I read in some articles and some interviews that Gerard Johnstone isn't going to jump right into making a sequel to M3GAN. He's going to give it a little while. Probably they'll work on a story, and I think give it the care that they gave this and not rush it, so they can do it right. But I have to imagine it's going to play all into that last scene where maybe M3GAN's consciousness is downloaded into this unit in Gemma's house. There is a tertiary character, the assistant to Gemma's boss, who we see downloading and stealing all the M3GAN files. And you have to imagine he's kind of like one of those abused employees that's not respected or not given a second glance, that he will probably sell this to a competitor. And while Gemma's company isn't going to go on with making the M3GAN android, another company might, and we might see M3GAN downloaded into this new doll. There's a lot of ways they could go with this. Again, much like this movie, everything was pretty predictable as to what was going to happen, but they did it well, and it was still enjoyable and engaging. So even though I knew essentially what was going to happen, I still enjoyed it. I think we know what's going to happen in a sequel, but I imagine I'll probably still enjoy it. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts, and that's my look at the new film M3GAN from director Gerard Johnstone and producers Jason Blum and James Wan. I thought this was a really solid horror effort to start off 2023. If it only gets better from here, I think we're going to have another really good year for horror. And even to a broader degree, fantasy and science fiction. I think all three of those genres really did well in 2022, and I'm looking for another big year in 2023 because we got a lot of good stuff coming out. Coming up on Thursday's show, we're going to be talking about the new Netflix Christian Bale movie, The Pale Blue Eye, so I'm excited about that. Willow is going to be wrapping up this week, so we're going to be talking about that next Monday, a week from this show airing. And I think a week from Thursday, we're going to be talking about some of the movies I missed in 2022. There were some movies that I just never got around to watching until this past week or so that came out in 2022. I was like, oh, I missed that. I didn't watch it. I really wanted to. So I've been watching some of those things, and we're going to talk about some of the things I missed in 2022 that I think are still worth a watch, and maybe probably should have been on some of my best of lists for 2022. But we'll talk about that next week. So I want to thank everyone for listening to my thoughts on M3GAN, a very cool, atmospheric, creepy horror film. Not heavy on the horror, but you get enough horror to really enjoy it if you are a horror fan, I think. There are going to be some people that aren't going to be happy with this, but some of those people will never be happy with anything. Unless it's exactly the one movie that they particularly like. So I want to thank everyone for checking out my thoughts on M3GAN. You can find out more on what's going on with the Odds Bodkins Curiosity Shop on our fan page on Facebook, as well as Instagram. Of course, I'm always posting trailers to movies and series coming out. Always posting articles I find all over the internet about the horror, fantasy, and science fiction we love, and add my 2 cents as well. Or at least I try to. So no matter where you listen to this podcast, please subscribe to it, follow it, like it, whatever you have to do. Please share this podcast with anyone that you know that loves horror, fantasy, and science fiction, or just share it in general and let God sort him out. And also leave a review. 5 stars would be awesome, but whatever review you leave, we do appreciate it, and it helps immensely in getting the word out about this podcast. So until next time, thank you for visiting Odds Bodkins Curiosity Shop. We hope that you found something to your liking and visit the shop again soon. But even though you may come back, you never really get to leave Odds Bodkins Curiosity Shop.